Mr. Harrison Drake had always been a man of ambition. He spent most of his life building an empire that spanned across countries, reaching heights many could only dream of. He wasn't just a businessman, he was a force in the world of finance, known for his sharp mind and relentless drive. But, in the process, he had sacrificed something very precious: time with his family. Years passed without him noticing how much things had changed at home. His world revolved around meetings, business deals, and international travels. He knew his wife, Eleanor, and their young daughter, Emily, were waiting for him at home, but he didn't understand how different things had become until he returned. It had been nearly 5 years since he last stepped foot in his sprawling mansion. The grand estate was located on the outskirts of the city, perched on a hill with a breathtaking view of the countryside. A place of luxury and comfort, it was the home where Harrison had raised his daughter and spent his early years with his wife, Eleanor. But things were different now. Eleanor had passed away after a long battle with illness, and though Harrison knew it had been hard for Emily, he hadn't been there to witness the pain she had gone through. The day Harrison arrived back, it was a quiet one. The estate, once bustling with life, seemed to have lost some of its vibrancy. He drove up the long, winding driveway, the tires crunching against the gravel. As he parked the car and stepped out, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The air around him felt heavy, and the grand mansion before him felt eerily silent. The house was still, but the echoes of old memories filled the space, memories of a time when laughter and conversations filled the halls. Harrison stood still for a moment, looking at the mansion, wondering what had changed. Was it just the house, or had something deeper shifted? He had worked hard for this moment to come back home, and now, as he stood there, he wasn't sure what he would find. He hadn't seen his daughter in almost 5 years. The thought of how much she must have changed in that time made him uneasy. Emily was just a little girl when he left, full of energy and curiosity. Now, she was a young woman, and he had missed so much of her growing up. Would she still want him around? Would she be angry with him for leaving? Harrison's thoughts were interrupted when the door to the mansion opened. A familiar face appeared in the doorway. It was Maria, the family's longtime maid. Maria had worked for the Drake family for over a decade. She was there when Harrison and Eleanor first bought the estate, and she had been a constant presence in their lives. She had cared for Emily since she was a baby, and it was clear that the bond between them was strong. As Maria walked toward him, Harrison couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions: guilt, confusion, and even a little bit of fear. "Mr. Drake," Maria greeted him warmly, her voice calm and comforting. "It's so good to see you again." Harrison smiled weakly, nodding. "It's good to be back, Maria," he said, his voice thick with emotion. He hadn't realized how much he had missed the familiar faces of home, even if they weren't his own family. Maria seemed to notice the sadness in his eyes. She had always been perceptive, understanding the unspoken feelings of those around her. She looked at him for a moment, as if to assess the situation, before speaking again. "Come inside, Mr. Drake. Your daughter is waiting for you." With a nod, Harrison followed Maria into the house. As they walked through the grand entrance hall, he noticed the place was still just as beautiful as he remembered. The high ceilings, the polished floors, the large windows that let in the sunlight, it all seemed so familiar yet distant at the same time. It felt like he was stepping into someone else's life, not his own. Maria led him down a hallway to the living room. As they approached, Harrison could hear the soft sound of laughter coming from inside. It was a sound he hadn't heard in years, a sound that immediately made him feel like he was walking into a different world. Maria opened the door, and Harrison stepped inside, ready to greet his daughter. But what he saw caught him completely off guard. Emily, now a teenager, was sitting on the couch, her long hair cascading over her shoulders. She looked up as Harrison entered the room, her eyes bright with surprise. But it wasn't just Emily sitting there. Beside her was Maria, sitting closely on the couch, laughing with Emily as if they had known each other for a lifetime. Harrison froze in the doorway, unsure of how to react. Maria, his loyal maid, who had always been a figure of authority and care in the house, was sitting next to his daughter like an equal. He had never imagined a scenario like this, where the lines between employer and employee were blurred in such a personal way. The sight of them together, laughing and sharing stories, made Harrison feel like an outsider in his own home. For a moment, Harrison couldn't speak. He had always seen Maria as a caretaker for his family, someone who helped take care of the house and his daughter. But now, seeing her sitting beside Emily as if they were old friends, he felt an overwhelming sense of confusion. What had happened in his absence? How had their relationship evolved so much? Emily stood up and walked over to her father, a warm smile on her face. "Dad! You're home," she exclaimed, throwing her arms around him in a hug. For a moment, Harrison's heart swelled with relief. His daughter was still the same, full of love and affection, despite the time they had spent apart. But as he pulled back from the hug, his eyes couldn't help but return to Maria. The woman who had been his maid for so many years was now sitting beside his daughter, sharing the space like they were equals. Harrison couldn't help but feel a mixture of emotions: jealousy, confusion, and even a sense of loss. He had missed so much while he was away. "Dad, this is Maria," Emily said, noticing the look on Harrison's face. "She's been like a second mother to me. She stayed with me after Mom passed away. I don't know what I would have done without her." Harrison's heart sank. He had known that Maria was a good person, but he hadn't realized just how much she had meant to Emily. He hadn't been there for his daughter during the hardest time of her life, and Maria had stepped in without hesitation. The guilt weighed heavily on him as he tried to process the reality of the situation. "I didn't know. I didn't know you two had become so close," Harrison finally said, his voice cracking slightly. Maria stood up and smiled at him, her expression warm but knowing. "It's been a long time, Mr. Drake. A lot has changed." Harrison nodded, his mind spinning with the revelation. As he looked at Emily, he realized that he had a lot of catching up to do. The family he had left behind was not the same one that stood before him now. He had a lot to learn about his daughter's life, about Maria's role in it, and about how to rebuild the relationship he had lost. And as he sat down beside them, Harrison knew one thing for sure: his return would not be as simple as he had imagined. It was only the beginning of a new chapter, and he had no idea where it would lead. Harrison sat down in the large armchair beside his daughter, his mind still spinning from the unexpected scene in the living room. His gaze kept drifting back to Maria, who was standing by the window now, gazing out into the garden. The way she stood there, so calm and composed, made Harrison feel both comforted and unsettled. It was strange: he had always thought of Maria as a maid, someone who worked for the family. But today, seeing her sitting beside Emily like they were family, it hit him hard that he had missed so much in his absence. Emily sat down next to her father, her eyes bright with excitement. "I'm so glad you're back, Dad. There's so much I want to tell you." Her voice had a warm, eager tone, but there was something else in her eyes too, something Harrison couldn't quite place. She had grown so much, and he realized how much time he had lost, not just in her life, but in the life of the home he had built. "I'm glad to be back, sweetheart," Harrison replied, his voice sounding distant, even to his own ears. He was trying to focus on Emily, trying to bridge the gap that had formed between them over the years. But the presence of Maria in the room, and the way Emily looked at her, made things feel complicated. Maria turned to face them and gave a small, knowing smile. "I'll give you two some time," she said, her voice gentle. "I'll be in the kitchen if you need anything." With that, she left the room quietly, leaving father and daughter alone. As soon as Maria stepped out, Emily looked back at Harrison with an almost questioning expression. It was as though she wanted to speak her mind but was unsure how he would react. Harrison took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment he had imagined for years. He had come back to be with his daughter, but the situation felt far from simple. He had so many questions, and yet he didn't know where to begin. "Emily," Harrison began, his voice softer than usual. "I didn't know Maria and you were so close. She's been here for you all these years." Emily's expression softened as she nodded, her eyes glistening with emotion. "Yes, Dad," she said quietly. "Maria stayed with me after Mom died. I know you were busy with work, and I understand why you couldn't be there. But Maria, she didn't leave. She was there when I needed someone the most." The words struck Harrison hard. He hadn't known how much his absence had affected his daughter, how much she had needed him but had learned to live without him. He had been too consumed with his own ambitions, with his own world, to truly see what was happening at home. Maria had become more than just a maid. She had become a mother figure to Emily. And Harrison realized he had failed both of them in a way that was impossible to undo. "I should have been here," Harrison said, his voice filled with regret. "I should have been there for you when you needed me the most." Emily shook her head, her eyes full of understanding. "It's not your fault, Dad. I know you had to work, but you were gone for so long. Maria didn't just take care of me, she helped me grow. She was there for all the things I couldn't talk to anyone else about." She paused for a moment, as if gathering her thoughts. "I know you're back now, and that's what matters. But I can't pretend everything's the same." Harrison felt a lump form in his throat. His daughter, once a young child who had looked up to him, was now a young woman with her own opinions and feelings. He had missed so much, and though he couldn't change the past, he wanted to make things right. But how? "I want to be here for you now," Harrison said, his voice quiet but firm. "I know I can't change the past, but I want to make up for lost time. I want to be a father to you, Emily." Emily smiled softly, but there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "I want that too, Dad. I really do." She paused for a moment before continuing. "But you have to understand something. Maria and we're close. I don't think anything can change that. She's been like a second mom to me, and that's not something I can just forget. You might not understand, but she's always been there, even when I didn't realize how much I needed her." Harrison listened carefully, taking in every word. He realized just how much Maria had become a part of their family. He had always seen her as an employee, someone who helped around the house, but Emily had seen her as something much more. Maria had provided the emotional support and love that Harrison had failed to offer. That was hard for him to admit, but it was the truth. "I understand," Harrison said slowly, though it was clear he was still processing everything. "I don't want to replace her, Emily. I just want to be there for you. I've been so focused on everything else, I didn't see what was happening here. But I can see now how much Maria means to you." Emily's eyes softened as she reached out and took his hand. "I know you do, Dad. And I appreciate it. But it's going to take time. I can't just forget how Maria helped me through everything. She was there when I was angry, when I was sad, when I was confused. She never left me, and I need you to understand that." "I do," Harrison replied. "I don't expect things to change overnight. I just want to be a part of your life again. I want to help, even if it means just sitting and listening." Emily nodded. "That's all I want, too. I just need you to be here. We can work on everything else as we go. But please understand, Maria is not just an employee. She's family to me." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Harrison sat there, holding his daughter's hand, and for the first time in a long while, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: peace. He knew rebuilding their relationship wasn't going to be easy, and it wouldn't happen in a day. But for the first time, he felt like he could try. The silence was broken when Maria reappeared in the doorway, holding a tray with glasses of iced tea. She looked at the two of them and smiled, but there was something different in her expression, a sense of quiet understanding, as though she knew they had just had an important conversation. Harrison felt a rush of gratitude toward her. Despite all the years he had spent away, she had remained the steady presence Emily needed. "Would you like some tea?" Maria asked gently, stepping into the room. "Yes, thank you," Harrison replied, his voice steady. As she set the tray down on the table in front of them, Harrison felt a new understanding grow between them. Things might never be the same, but they could be better. He had a chance to start again, to be the father he should have been all along. The following days after Harrison's return were filled with quiet conversations and awkward silences. It wasn't that he and Emily didn't want to reconnect, it was just that the years between them were hard to ignore. Every time Harrison tried to bridge the gap, it felt like the distance between them was more than just the years that had passed. It was the emotional space that had built up, the years of missing each other, and the experiences they'd gone through without the other. It wasn't easy, and it didn't help that he felt like an outsider in his own home. One afternoon, a few days after his return, Harrison decided it was time to address the situation directly. He couldn't keep tiptoeing around it, especially with Maria's role in their lives becoming so clear. He had to understand how things had shifted, and what role he now played in Emily's life. He knew he had to talk to both of them, Maria and Emily, and get to the bottom of it all. It was the only way to move forward. He found Maria in the kitchen, preparing a light lunch. The smell of freshly baked bread filled the air, and Harrison couldn't help but remember the countless meals they had shared together as a family when he was still around. He had always appreciated Maria's cooking. It was one of the small things that made the house feel like home. "Maria, can we talk?" Harrison's voice was soft but firm, his intentions clear. Maria looked up from the counter where she was chopping vegetables, her eyes meeting his. She didn't seem surprised. She had always been aware of Harrison's internal struggles, even when he wasn't fully conscious of them. She wiped her hands on the kitchen towel before walking over to the table and taking a seat. She knew this conversation was inevitable. "I think we need to clear the air, Maria," Harrison began, sitting down across from her. "I've been thinking about everything, and I know that there's more going on here than I realized. I can't just pretend that everything is the way it was when I left." Maria nodded slowly, her gaze steady. "I understand, Mr. Drake. I know things have changed. But you need to know, I didn't step into your place. I didn't try to replace you. I just did what I could to help Emily." Harrison looked at her, his emotions bubbling beneath the surface. "I know. I know you were trying to help her. But I was her father. I should have been there. I wasn't, and now I see how close you two have become." Maria gave a small sigh and folded her hands on the table. "I've never wanted to take your place, Harrison. That wasn't my intention. But Emily was so lost after Eleanor passed. She needed someone, and I couldn't just stand by and watch her struggle. I loved her like a daughter, and that's something I couldn't just walk away from. I think you understand that now." Harrison sat back, absorbing her words. He had always respected Maria, but now he saw just how deep her commitment had run. She had been more than just an employee. She had been a caretaker, a guide, and even a friend to Emily when the girl needed it most. He realized that, in his absence, Maria had stepped into a role he should have been filling. It was painful to acknowledge, but it was the truth. "I didn't realize how much she depended on you," Harrison said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "I should have seen it. I should have been there for her." "You can't change the past, Harrison," Maria said gently. "But you can be here now. That's all that matters. Emily needs you, and I'm sure she wants to rebuild her relationship with you. It won't be easy, but it can be done. Harrison nodded slowly. I want to do that. I really do. But I don't know how. Maria smiled softly, a look of reassurance in her eyes. Start small. Just talk to her. Spend time with her. She's been waiting for you, even if she doesn't know how to show it. You've got time, and it's never too late. Harrison felt a weight lift off his shoulders as he realized the truth in Maria's words. He could start over. He could rebuild. It wasn't too late to be the father Emily deserved. He didn't need to fix everything in one conversation or one day. He just needed to show up, and that was a start. Thank you, Maria, Harrison said, his voice sincere. I don't know what I would have done without you. Maria gave a small nod, then stood up from the table. You don't need to thank me. I just did what I thought was right. Harrison watched her as she walked back to the kitchen counter, a sense of gratitude filling his heart. He had come to understand just how much Maria had done for Emily, and how much she meant to both of them. But it was clear that if he wanted to truly be part of Emily's life again, he had to make an effort. He couldn't sit back and wait for things to fall into place. He needed to be present. Later that day, after lunch, Harrison found Emily sitting by the large window in the living room, staring out at the garden. Her expression was thoughtful, almost distant, and it reminded him of how much she had grown in the time he was away. She wasn't the little girl he remembered. She was a young woman now, with her own thoughts, feelings, and experiences. Harrison stood in the doorway for a moment, unsure of how to approach her. The silence between them was heavy, but he knew this was the time to talk, to bridge the gap that had formed between them. He couldn't waste any more time. Emily. His voice was tentative, but full of intent. Can we talk? Emily turned to face him, her eyes meeting his for the first time in days. She didn't smile, but she didn't look angry either. It was as if she was waiting for him to prove that he was truly back, ready to be the father she needed. I guess we need to, don't we? Emily said softly, her tone neutral, but there was a vulnerability there, one that Harrison hadn't seen in a long time. He walked over and sat beside her on the couch. I've been thinking a lot, he began, his voice quiet but steady. About everything. About how much I've missed, about how much I've failed to see. Emily looked down at her hands for a moment, then met his eyes. It's not just about what you missed, Dad. It's about what we both missed. I needed you, but you weren't here. And it hurt. But I don't blame you. I just don't know how to feel anymore. Harrison's heart sank, but he knew this was the first step. He had to listen, even if the truth was painful. I understand. And I'm sorry, Emily. I know I can't change the past. But I want to make things right. I don't expect it to be easy, but I'm here now. And I want to be here for you. No more running away. Emily's eyes softened, and she reached for his hand. I want that too, Dad. I really do. But it's going to take time. Harrison squeezed her hand gently, realizing that this was just the beginning. They had a long way to go, but for the first time in years, he felt hope. Hope that they could rebuild what they had lost. Hope that, with time and effort, he could be the father she had always needed. The days that followed Harrison's heartfelt conversation with Emily were filled with small steps forward. It wasn't easy, but they were both trying. The air between them was no longer thick with tension, but there was still an unspoken distance, a quiet understanding that things couldn't just go back to how they had been. Harrison knew that he couldn't force things to be like they once were, but he could show up and make an effort. That's what mattered now. Harrison had always been someone who believed in results, big, fast changes that proved progress. But this was different. He was learning that healing didn't work that way. The emotional wounds from the past couldn't be fixed overnight. They had to be tended to, one small action at a time. One evening, after dinner, Harrison found himself sitting across from Emily in the living room. The room was quiet, save for the faint sound of rain tapping against the windows. The soft glow of the chandelier cast a warm light over the space, and for the first time in days, there was a sense of calm between them. Emily was sitting with her legs crossed on the couch, a book in her lap, but she kept glancing up at her father every few seconds. It was clear she wanted to say something, but was unsure how to begin. Finally, Emily broke the silence. "Dad, I know you're trying. I really do. But I need you to understand something." Harrison looked up, his attention completely on her. He had learned that when Emily spoke like this, it was important to listen carefully. She wasn't one to open up easily, but when she did, her words were worth paying attention to. "What is it, Emily?" Harrison asked gently. She hesitated for a moment, her fingers nervously fiddling with the pages of the book in her lap. "It's about Maria," she said, her voice soft but serious. "I know you've been trying to understand how close we are, and I don't want you to feel like you're being replaced. But you have to know that Maria has been the only constant in my life since Mom passed away." Harrison's heart tightened at the mention of Eleanor. He had known that Emily had struggled with her mother's death, but hearing her say it so plainly made him realize how deep the pain ran. He had failed her in ways he couldn't even begin to understand. "I get that, Emily," Harrison said quietly. "I can see how important she is to you. And I don't want to take her place. I just want to be here for you." Emily met his gaze, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and understanding. "I know you want to be here, Dad. And I want that too. But it's not just about being here. It's about being here the right way. I don't want you to just fill the empty space. I want us to rebuild, to really be a family again." Harrison nodded slowly, his chest heavy with emotion. He realized that Emily wasn't asking for grand gestures or promises he couldn't keep. She was asking for something simple: honesty, consistency, and time. She didn't need him to fix everything, she just needed him to show up in the way she needed him to. "I'm trying, Emily," Harrison said, his voice thick with sincerity. "And I'll keep trying. I know it's not going to be easy. But I'll be here. I'll be here for you." For a moment, the two of them sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Harrison thought about all the years he had spent away, focused on his career and ambitions, leaving his daughter to grow up without him. He thought about the pain Emily had gone through, and how much she had needed him but had to learn to live without him. It was a hard realization, but one he couldn't ignore. Emily finally broke the silence, her voice more relaxed now. "You know, I'm not angry with you anymore. I was, but not anymore. I just want us to move forward." Harrison felt a weight lift off his shoulders. "I'm so sorry, Emily. I wasn't there when you needed me. I won't make that mistake again." Emily smiled faintly, but there was no bitterness in her expression, just a quiet understanding. "It's okay. I know you didn't mean to hurt me. I just want us to be close again." As the evening wore on, Harrison and Emily continued to talk, but this time, it wasn't filled with awkward pauses or painful silences. The conversation flowed more easily, and though there was still a lot of ground to cover, they were finally starting to find a rhythm. The tension that had hung over their interaction seemed to be melting away, replaced by something more hopeful. Later that night, Harrison found himself sitting alone in the study, staring at the family portraits on the wall. His gaze lingered on the photograph of Eleanor, her smile forever frozen in time. He felt a deep pang of guilt in his chest. Eleanor had always been the one who held everything together, the one who made their family feel whole. But now, it was his turn to step up to be the father Emily needed. He heard footsteps approach, and soon, Maria entered the study. She didn't say anything right away, she just stood there, watching him for a moment. Harrison didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The familiar presence of Maria had become a comfort in the house, a constant reminder that even though he had been absent, there were people here who cared deeply for his daughter. "I see you're starting to make progress," Maria said, her voice soft but knowing. Harrison turned to face her, his expression tired but grateful. "It's slow, Maria. But I'm trying. I'm trying to rebuild with her." Maria nodded, her gaze steady. "You're doing well, Harrison. It takes time, but you're showing her that you're here, that you care. That's what matters." "I don't know if I'll ever make up for all the time I lost," Harrison said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "But I'll spend the rest of my life trying." Maria smiled, though it wasn't a smile of triumph, it was one of understanding, of knowing that sometimes the hardest journeys were the ones that took the longest. That's all any of us can do. Harrison felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. He knew he had a long road ahead, but for the first time in years, he felt like he was on the right path. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be bumps along the way, but he was determined to be the father Emily deserved. He was finally ready to rebuild the family he had lost. Over the following weeks, Harrison settled into a routine in the house. It wasn't the perfect, smooth transition he had hoped for, but it was a start. He and Emily began to spend more time together, doing simple things, talking over breakfast, taking walks in the garden, and even watching movies in the living room. The connection between them was still fragile, but it was slowly rebuilding, brick by brick. One afternoon, as the sun was starting to set, Harrison found himself sitting in the kitchen with Maria. The house felt warmer now, not just from the heat of the afternoon sun but from the growing sense of togetherness. He had spent a long time living in his own world, distant and disconnected from those he loved. But now, things were beginning to change. "You're doing better than I expected," Maria said with a small smile, breaking the silence. She was stirring a pot of soup on the stove, her movements calm and graceful. Harrison had always admired how at ease Maria was in the kitchen. She had a way of making even the simplest meal feel special. It was one of the many things that had kept the house grounded during his absence. Harrison gave a small laugh, though it was laced with both relief and guilt. "I wasn't sure I was doing enough at first," he admitted. "But I'm learning. Emily, she's opening up, slowly. We're getting there." Maria glanced over at him, her expression thoughtful. "It's not about rushing. It's about showing up, day by day. It'll take time, but as long as you keep being there for her, it'll make all the difference." "I know," Harrison said, nodding. "It's just, sometimes, I feel like I can't make up for everything I missed. I can't change the past, but I want to help her now. I want to be the father she deserves." Maria stopped stirring the soup for a moment and turned to face him fully. "You're here now, Harrison. And that's what matters. You're not perfect. No one is. But you're trying. That counts for more than you realize." Her words lingered in the air, settling in Harrison's chest. He had always prided himself on being a man of action, a man who could fix problems with quick solutions. But this was different. He couldn't fix the past with a few gestures or grand statements. He had to earn back Emily's trust, and that took time. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but at least it was a road he was finally willing to walk. Later that evening, Harrison decided to sit down with Emily again. She had been quieter than usual lately, and he wanted to make sure she knew he was there for her no matter what. He found her sitting on the porch, looking out at the darkening sky. The night had a soft stillness to it, the kind that made everything feel calm yet uncertain at the same time. "Mind if I join you?" Harrison asked, standing a few feet away. Emily looked up and gave him a small smile. "Sure, Dad," she said, patting the seat beside her. Harrison sat down next to her, the wooden bench creaking under their weight. For a few moments, neither of them said anything. The sound of crickets filled the air, a gentle reminder that life moved on, no matter how much they wanted to pause it. "I've been thinking," Harrison started, his voice quiet. "I know things have been difficult, and I want you to know that I'm trying. I'm not perfect, and I can't make up for the years I've missed. But I want you to know that I'm here now. And I'm going to keep being here." Emily didn't answer right away. She just stared ahead, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the porch light. Harrison waited, giving her space to respond when she was ready. After a few moments, she turned to him, her expression thoughtful but kind. "I know, Dad," she said gently. "I really do. I've seen you trying. It's just, sometimes it's hard. I want things to go back to how they were, but I know they can't. We can't just erase the past." Harrison felt a lump form in his throat. "I know. I don't want to erase it, Emily. I just want to be part of your future. I want to be the father you deserve, even if it takes time." Emily nodded slowly, her eyes bright with emotion. "It's going to take time. But I think we can get there. I just need you to keep showing up, like you are now." The words meant more to Harrison than he could express. He had spent so much time worrying about what he had lost, about how much time he had wasted. But Emily's words were a reminder that it wasn't too late. They could rebuild, piece by piece. And every small effort mattered. "I will," Harrison promised, his voice steady but filled with a quiet determination. "I'm not going anywhere." As the night wore on, they sat together in silence, the cool evening air wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. Harrison could feel the weight of the past slowly lifting, replaced by a sense of hope that he hadn't felt in years. There were still many hurdles to overcome, but he was finally willing to face them. The next few weeks passed by in a blur of small victories and quiet moments. Harrison continued to spend time with Emily, sharing meals, talking about their days, and doing simple things together. It wasn't always easy. Sometimes the silence between them would feel heavy, reminding them of everything that had come before. But more often than not, the silence was filled with a new kind of understanding. They didn't need to rush, they just needed to be present. One evening, after a long day, Harrison sat in the living room, reflecting on how much had changed since his return. The house no longer felt like an empty shell, a place that only reminded him of his failures. It felt like home again, in a way he hadn't imagined possible. There was laughter in the hallways, the sound of footsteps in the kitchen, and the warmth of family growing stronger each day. Maria entered the room quietly, carrying a tray of tea. She placed it on the coffee table in front of Harrison and took a seat across from him. "Things are looking better," she said, her voice warm with approval. "You and Emily, you're making progress. I can see it." Harrison smiled softly, his heart full. "It's slow, but it's progress. I've missed so much, but I'm here now. And that's what matters." Maria nodded. "It's all anyone can ask for." Harrison looked at her, his expression filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Maria. For everything." She smiled, her eyes full of kindness. "It was always my pleasure, Harrison. But remember, you're doing this for you and Emily now. You're showing her that no matter what happened, she's not alone." Harrison nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. It had taken time, but he was finally where he needed to be. The road ahead was still long, but with every passing day, it felt more like a journey he was willing to take. As the evening stretched on, Harrison knew that the true test of his efforts wouldn't come in grand gestures or perfect moments. It would come in the small, everyday acts of being present, of showing up for Emily, of listening when she needed to speak, and of being the father she deserved, no matter how long it took.